So good morning, everybody. So the last year we spoke about 2 weeks ago was about Ezra Hasofer actually revolutionizing the whole concept of Torah. And we discovered that one of the basic reasons why he needed to do it was because of the total ignorance of the Jewish people after being 70 years in the Galut in Babel. And he finds that three things have taken place. We spoke about it. One was intermarriage, which we'll speak about the next shiur. Chilul Shabbat, which was written in Sefer Nechemya. And ignorance. Ignorance that had forgotten what it is to speak Hebrew. Within 70 years, they forgot the Hebrew language. And this is brought in the Rambam in Ilchot Tfilah, and he says the following, line number 10. Kivan shegalu Yisrael b'mei Nebuchadnezzar Harasha, once Am Yisrael had been exiled from Nebuchadnezzar, nitarvu b'paras v'yavan b'shar umot, there was intermarriage, v'noldu lahem banim ba'artzot hagoyim, and children were born in these places, Votam Abanim, and these children nitbalbelu sfatam. Their language got mixed up. Vayta safa kol echad ve'echad me'urevet milshonot harbe. And their language was mixed up from many, many different languages. Okay, you take Yiddish, which is a mixture of all different languages, Landino. V'kiven shaya medaber, and since they couldn't speak, eino yachol ledaber kol tzor b'lashon achat, ela b'shibush. Now, what was the problem? And what was the defining factor between Yiddish and Landino? And the answer is because in those days there were no books. No books. In our period, there were books. Therefore, you read and you wrote. Even in Chutz La'aretz, we all know, majority of us couldn't speak Hebrew. What could we do? We could read. They taught us to write. Being able to read and write creates for ourselves a certain identity. In the world of Ezra Hasofer, there was no reading and there was no writing. Why? No books. The only books they had was parchment on a Torah, Tanakh. The comparison to this is what happened to the Ethiopian Jews. Ethiopian Jews, there were just a few people who knew how to read and write. Their language was, spoken language was called Amharic, and their written language was called Gez. Everything was written in this language called Gez. Their spoken language was Amharic, and therefore vast majority of them didn't know how to read and write. This took place in the period of Ezra. Okay, think to yourselves, try to think to yourself in a world where there are no books. And your only sense of language is spoken. You aren't taught to read or write. So all you do is you hear. Remember, language is brought over in many, many different ways. Sight, hearing. Okay, if you can't see letters, therefore all you do is you hear. Now, hearing means to say that you get mixed up in different languages. And that's what happened in the time of Ezra. So what does Ezra have to do first of all? First of all, he has to reroute the whole concept of how we're going to learn. And therefore, what does he do? He says in line number 15, the Rambam says, he doesn't have the ability to use language לשאול חפציו או להגיד שבח בקדוש ברוך הוא בלשון הקודש עד שיערבו עמה לשונות אחרת. Everybody spoke a mumble jumble of languages. And therefore, וכיוון שראה עזרא בית דינו, what does Ezra do? עמדו ותקנו להם 18 ברכות על הסדר. They all learned by heart 18 brachot. Amidah. He teaches them one system of davening, okay, which they all learn by heart. Shalosh Rishonot Shevach Lashem. First three are praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalosh Achronot Hodaya, thanking Hashem. Emtsaut, the middle ones, Yesh Behem Shelot Kol HaDvarim. And therefore, this helps people to formulate what they want to say. That's the first thing Ezra Hasofer does. Formulation of tefillah. Next, what else does he do? Hilchot Kriyat Shema. Bracha Rishona, Shelefanea, Bein Bayom, Bein Balayla, Potech Ba Baruch, starts off with Baruch, Chotem Baruch, V'shar B'chotea Kolem, etc., etc. And then he says in the last line, the Ezra Sofer Bet Dinot Tiknum. Ezra Sofer formulate the brachot of Kriyat Shema. The same brachot which we have of Kriyat Shema, Yotze Or Avar Rabba Ga'al Yisrael, that's formulated by Ezra. So he formulates Shmona Esrei, he formulates the principles of Birchot Kriyat Shema. What else does he do? The Nusach Kol HaBrachot, line number 30. Not only does that, there's Birchas HaMazon, but what does he do? He formulates all the brachot. The Nusach Kol HaBrachot, Ezra Sofer Ubet Dinot Tiknu. Therefore, the first thing he does is teaches people to daven. Remember, in the first Beit HaMikdash, there is nothing. There is no shuls. They've only got the Beit HaMikdash. Everybody davens in his house. So therefore, the first thing he does is formulates a system of tefillah where everybody is taught. Please look at line number 7. Hem amru shlosha dvarim. Anshe Knesset HaGdolah said 3 things. Hevu metzunin dvadim va'amidu talmidim harbe. Create a formulation of schools. That's what Ezra Hasofer does. And what does he do in these schools? He teaches them, first of all, how to daven. Now, the next thing he does, Chazal come and say the following. Gemara in Sanhedrin. Tanya Rabbi Yossi Omer. Ra'ui haya Ezra shetinaten Torah al yado. The Torah really should have been given to Ezra. Only what? Ilmale lo kdamo Moshe. Were it not for the fact that Moshe preceded him in time. That means we're talking about somebody who Chazal perceive as the person who was the greatest Torah giver since Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, what does he do? Chazal say, Umoshe ala el Elokim, ve'Ezra omer, Ezra ala mi Bavel. Ma aliyah amura kan b'Torah, af aliyah hamur b'Torah. B'Moshe omer v'oti tziva Hashem, ve'Ezra omer, Ezra heichil levavo lidrosh. And now we're jumping the line. Af al pi shelo nitna Torah al yado, nishtana al yado aktav. Ezra Hasofer changes the font of writing. Fonts. You all know what fonts are. You open up Word document, which we all know. They have different fonts. Now, fonts have a great impact on how you read. Okay? If you use, you take certain fonts, your eyes do not have the ability to read it properly. Ezra changes the font of the Hebrew language. The Torah was given in something which was known as Ktav Ivri. Pardon? Forget about Rashi. Rashi didn't write that way. That was the printers. Remember, the printers, which we think had the biggest impact on our learning. Pardon? What do you mean by that? No, they weren't even Jewish, but we're talking about what differentiated between the text of the Torah and Rashi. So therefore they needed to explain how that this is the text and this is a commentary. That's why they did it. Rashi never ever wrote that way, I promise you. Okay? Okay, if you look in the manuscripts, you'll see Rashi did not write that way. We have got photographs of Rashi's, documents of Rashi's writing. So we've got the Rambam's writing. Okay? So therefore, Ezra Hasofer sees the need to change the font in order that will be attractive to their eyes. Why does he do that? Because he knows he's got to teach, and he's got to teach quickly. And therefore he makes the letters, which we have nowadays, the writing of the Sefer Torah, each letter is distinct. Now, each letter is distinct. Take scribble vis-a-vis what we taught, block letters versus scribble, which is easy to read. Now, everybody understands their own writing, if they manage to understand it.
Unless you're a doctor.
What? Unless you're a doctor. Right. Okay, but I'm saying, that is the concept of writing. So therefore, in order to teach people, Ezra Hasofer changes the writing of the Torah, which means to say, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu to write the Torah, Ezra Hasofer changes that ksav. He changes the font which HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught Moshe Rabbeinu.
I think there was actually a scroll in one of the museums in New York where they showed you the old text.
The old text, yeah, there is. 100%.
Isn't that a problem?
Exactly, it's a problem. That is a huge problem.
Halachically,
everything. Now, that's what you call revolutionary. Now, how does he do it? And here we have a fascinating explanation of the Meshech Chochmah, Reb Meir Simcha of Dvinsk. Rav Kook also wrote on this subject, okay, but Rav Kook writes the way he does. We're going to use the Meshech Chochmah. Says the Meshech Chochmah, Ha'inyan, line number 40. Line number 40. Ha'inyan, ki matzanu be'ezra, sheshina ha'ktav. He changes the fonts. V'hu ki be'emet, ye'ot lefi mishpatei ha'Torah. It is correct. It should be, according to the way the Torah perceives, tehei mesura biyad ha'kohanim v'alviim. You only want to, who you're going to give knowledge to. Who do you want to give knowledge to? Now, nowadays, we want to give knowledge to most people. But in the olden days, where you didn't have cars, you didn't have phones, therefore very few people could read and write, had the time to do it, had the ability, had what you call the Sitzfleisch, the ability to sit down and read. Okay? So therefore, the Torah is really given to who? The Kohanim, Leviim, Zkenim, Asher yesh b'hem kol michmenei hashleimut. They've got the ability, they've got, their souls are full. And, v'aprushim hayoshvim b'Yerushalayim. V'chol mi shenadavo libo, anybody who volunteers, litkarev el HaTorah. Como shematzanu b'Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus. V'hayu yeshivot hagdolot, asher nikbetzu kol ha'ra'ui b'hem lefi chochmat binatam. V'chein matzanu b'sifrei. Al kra leman tilmad liyirat Hashem. In order that you should learn in order to fear God. Therefore, only those people who have got the ability to fear God, they're the ones who learn Torah. Umipnei zeh haya Torah ktuva biktav ivri. That's why the font of the Torah was so complicated. They didn't want everybody to sit and learn. They didn't want everybody to sit and learn.
Isn't that the font that Hashem chose?
Pardon?
Isn't that the font
No, but the font has an impact on a person. Okay?
But
How long?
Hashem originally chose that font?
He chose it. So to speak. One minute.
He didn't want everybody to learn.
In order, leman, lo yilmad mi she'eino ra'ui. Learning texts, there's a huge difference between learning texts and hearing texts. When you hear, concentration. Text in front of you, and that's why every share I give, you always have a text in front of you, is because this enables you not only to believe what I say, which I don't want you to do, and I want you to read with me. That means to say there's a huge difference. When you hear something, you can inverted comma be bamboozled. You don't know all the details, you haven't got the ability to pick everything up. So therefore, in a world where people are illiterate, there's hardly any books. Therefore, what do? Their impact of learning is to be somebody, if there are a few books, who are the people who have got the ability to sit down and learn? Very few. Now, למה לא ילמד מי שאינו ראוי? כזורק אבן למרקוליס, ולא יבנה גם אני, also I know everything. אמנם, עזרא ראה בזמנו, לפי פיזור ישראל. Ezra Hasofer sees in his generation, Jews are being scattered all over the world. Bavel, Paras, Greece, Egypt, no central force. They don't only live in Eretz Israel. V'tishakach mehem ikarei Torah. And things, Torah, will be forgotten. And therefore, v'nistam hachazon, and we're going to speak about that soon. Ruach HaKodesh was being taken away from the Jewish people. No nevu'ah. We are talking about a period of transition from prophecy to books, prophecy to learning. Ezra Hasofer sees if there are no prophets, how are the Jewish people going to continue? And the answer is mass education. And therefore, what does he do? He's willing to take the chance of changing the font of the Torah, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu dictates the Torah to, and he changes it to a font which everybody can learn quickly. That's what he does. And he says, V'nistam hachazon, u'bitlu haro'im ba'aspaklaria meira, there are no prophets. Yoter ne'ot, it's easier to write, bilashon muvan lekol arotze ladat. The battle of quality versus quantity. What is the guidelines of education? Quantity or quality? Do you want everybody to read? Or do you want just a few people to read, but the quality will be greater? That is the problem which Ezra Hasofer faced. And he decides, but you can't have both. But you can't. Ezra Hasofer decides that for saving the Jewish people, we need quantity. Ha'amidu talmidim harbe. That's what we need. Okay? Correct. It goes around in cycles. It'll go around in a cycle. But the period of Ezra, when they came back from Galut, okay, and you've got into marriage, and you've got ignorance and no knowledge, what do? The first thing is education, the masses. Let them know the basics. That's what Ezra Hasofer decides to do. Everybody will know how to daven. Everybody will know how to go to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we'll see another thing which he does in a minute. Right? Umutav lahagia. Look what he says. The Meshech Chochmah. Umutav lahagia ela matara haneota. And it's better to create quantity. L'archiv adat ma'aretz. Kasher be'emet nitpashta ad ma'od ha'torah bizman bait sheni. Second temple, Torah developed. First Beis HaMikdash, no learning Torah. You had the Beis HaMikdash, you had prophets, you had the Kohen Gadol, you had everything. One thing you didn't have, education. And people followed the prophets until the destruction of the temple. Ezra Hasofer decides to do a rewind, restart. And what is the restart? Not relying on great people, relying on educating the masses. You will have a problem, correct. What will be the problem? that in that period begins machloikas, because the more you open up books, everybody reads in a different way. So there's a price to pay. There's a price to pay in everything. But Ezra Hasofer decides to open up the Torah maximum. And therefore the first thing he does is teach people how to daven, create a new font which is easy for people to read. Right. V'lisbol, and to suffer the damage of lack of quality. And you might have problems, and you do. V'zeh shafat. Line number 50, please do answer what you asked a minute ago. In line number, the 2 lines before the end, V'zeh shafat. Beruach HaKodesh Ruach Eloki. Ezra Hasofer had, so to speak, he was one of the last of the prophets. He realizes this is what needs to be done. V'ifligu Chazal ad ki amru ra'ui haya Ezra linaten Torah al yado k'mo al yidei Moshe. That's revolution. He changes the writing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in order to educate the masses. He begins to teach people how to daven. What else does he do? Let's go next stage. Moshe Rabbeinu, Ese Takanot. Ese makes 10 enactments. Shekorim b'mincha, b'shabbat, v'korim b'sheni v'chamishi. Kriyas HaTorah. Kriyas HaTorah. But not Kriyas HaTorah once a week. Kriyas HaTorah, when? On Shabbos afternoon, after you got up from your shlof, and Monday and Thursday. Why is that? Why is that? Moshe Rabbeinu, says the Rambam, Tiken lehem liYisrael, sheyu korim b'Torah barabim, b'Shabbos u'v'sheni v'chamishi, Kadosh lo yesh yishush shlosha yamim. Moshe Rabbeinu enacted this first of all. He also enacted Kriyas HaTorah, Shabbos, Monday and Thursday. Ve'ezra tiken, sheyu korim kein b'mincha, b'chol Shabbat, mishum yoshvei kranot. Moshe Rabbeinu, Ezra Hasofer, says mincha on Shabbos. Don't waste your time in the afternoons on Shabbos. Come and hear Kriyas HaTorah. Now, וגם הוא תיקן, שקוראים בשני וחמישי 3 בני אדם. ולא יקראו פחות מ10 פסוקים. Ezra Hasofer doesn't just rely on one pasuk. As far as Moshe Rabbeinu was concerned, you can read one pasuk and you would have kept the mitzvah. Ezra Hasofer says it's no less than 10 psukim. What is the objective of these 10 psukim? And how do you do it? You call up 3 people. Those 3 people had to learn to read. It wasn't like we have Baal Koireh. No. Each one had to read 3 psukim. Investing in education. Exactly like the Sfardim do. What else does he do? Ezra Tiken lehem Yisrael, the order. What parshas to read. When. Next, line number halacha yud. Mimot Ezra. Tiken sheyesham turgaman. Metargem la'am ma she'akore b'Torah kedei sheyavinu inyan dvarim. There's a translator. Every pasuk or every parsha, after that, you translate it.
Now he's going to quality.
Pardon?
Now he's starting
Now it's quality. Okay? Kedei sheyavinu. So what is this revolution which Ezra does? This is a whole new restart of education. Educating the masses. And Ezra Hasofer does it in a particular way. And here there's a brilliant statement of Rav Soloveitchik on this subject. It says the following. In one of the shiurim he spoke about it. Lachen, line number 70. Lachen, takanat Moshe שהתייחסה לקריאת תורה שבכתב בתור קריאה. התבססה על שיעורי פסוק. Only one pasuk. You need to hear Torah. What am I going to do? I'm going to brainwash you guys that there is such a thing called Torah. We take it out, we show it. All you need is one pasuk. That exists. The words exist. או 3 פסוקים. כדי שייצג כהנים לוויים ישראלים, אך לא היה בו זכר ל10 פסוקים. No such thing as 10 פסוקים. Ezra is מתקן minimum 10 sentences. שיעור זה נקבע, this שיעור of 10 פסוקים, נקבע במסגרת תקנת עזרא, שהכניסה יסוד חדש ביחס לקריאת התורה. עזרא ביסס קריאת התורה על חיוב קריאת תורה שבכתב מקושרת בתורה שבעל פה. When you read Torah, you also have to have subject matter. What is 10 psukim? 10 sentences already is a subject. Take 10 psukim of the beginning of Vayetze. When Moshe Rabbeinu, all you need to do is Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva vayelech Harana. Close the Sefer Torah. You want to do another 3 psukim? Okay. But if you do 10 psukim, and you speak about the subject of the dream of Yaakov, this is already subject matter. Quality. Not just impressions, not just impacts, but what? But something far deeper. Knowledge. Okay? I don't want only to impress upon a person. I don't want people to be impressed by me. I want to give people knowledge. That's what Ezra Hasofer does. He gives the people the ability to know and understand.
But then why do you have to go over the same thing 3 times?
You don't? You don't? You don't go over the same thing 3 times? What, during the week you mean?
Yeah.
To teach them that there's subjects to learn. This is what you've got to know.
Why don't you choose another subject?
Pardon?
Why don't you choose another?
Correct, you could have. Correct, you could do Bereshit, the first Rishon, okay, on what's it called? Correct, you could have done it that way. Later on, perhaps in the time of Ezra, that's exactly what they did. Monday and Thursday and Shabbos afternoon, they did different parts. They could have done such a thing. We don't for all different reasons. But in the time of Ezra, we don't know exactly how the Kriyat Torah worked. Perhaps that's what they did. The more you know, the more you listen, the more you understand. Okay? Lachen hinhig, line number 78, 79. Lachen hinhig. Ezra Sofer enacts minyan chadash likriyat Torah. 10 psukim hamavim shi'ur. This is a subject בענייני Torah. בשעה שחילוק לפסוקים יוצר חטיבות כרוכות בפעולת קריאה. פחות מפסוק אחד אינו ניתן לקריאה. פחות ניתן מ10 פסוקים. You can read but you don't understand. Moshe Rabbeinu, Ezra Hasofer, what does he do? He creates a system of learning. Subjects. Moshe Rabbeinu is a prophet. Ezra Hasofer is a teacher. He was the greatest teacher. But, what is it written? It's written regarding Moshe that Aaron HaKohen had a bigger impact than Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay? He was our greatest teacher. He's called Moshe Rabbeinu. But as far as educating the masses, Ezra Hasofer revolutionarized the whole concept of Torah. Number 1, he does it by teaching. Now, is that the only reason because there was ignorance? There was something far deeper than this. It wasn't just the ignorance of the Jewish people. There was something far, far deeper. And now we're going to go in to the biggest problem. Let's carry on. Line number 95. Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai. Line number 95. We all know this Mishnah. Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai. Umasara LeYoshua. Okay? Moshe Rabbeinu teaches Yoshua. There is a direct pupil. Yoshua lives with Moshe Rabbeinu. Yoshua does Kenim. Yoshua gives it over to the elders who lived in his time. Skenim Lanviim. Now, what happens in the period of between the Skenim and the Nevi'im? Between the Skenim and the Nevi'im. Very good. Sefer Shoftim. The Skenim of Yoshua until Shmuel Hanovi, vacuum. Utter vacuum. Sefer Shoftim, as you said quite correctly. Ish hayashar be'inav. When you have periods of transition, you have hefka, chaos. Chaos. Now, Skenim Lanviim, until Shmuel comes, period of hefka, period of chaos. Skenim Lanviim is one. Nevi'im unevi'im mesarua l'anshei knesset hagdola. Take note of the language of Pirkei Avot. There's Moshe Kibel Torah miYoshua u'Mesara LeYoshua. When is the next time this Mesirah actually takes place? From the Nevi'im to Anshei Knesset Hagdola. There's no chaos here. There is chaos amongst the majority of Jews, but in the Masorah, in the tradition of Torah, there's no chaos. There is a transition who Ezra Hasofer takes responsibility.
And that's 626.
Pardon?
And after that, we were able to get the...
Right. Now, what happens? Mishemeto Nevi'im Achronim. When the last Nevi'im die, Nistalka Ruach HaKodesh Misrael. When Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi pass away, there's no nevuah anymore, no prophecy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not communicate with human beings directly. What is prophecy?
Why?
Prophecy, a minute why, we'll see in a minute. What is prophecy? Prophecy is communication. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not communicate directly to human beings. Now, why is that? What happens? Okay? But before we get to the why, let's see what the last prophecy is. The last prophet in Trei Asar is Malachi. And what is the last sentence of Malachi? We say it on Shabbos HaGodol. Zichru Torat Moshe Avdi Asher tziviti otam b'chorev al kol Yisrael chukim u'mishpatim. Remember Torat Moshe Asher tziviti oto b'chorev al kol Yisrael chukim u'mishpatim. Don't give up hope, he says. Hinei anochi sholech lachem et Elia Hanavi. There'll be geula, there'll be redemption. And what else will there be? Heshiv levot abalmanim. There'll be tshuva. Children will bring back their parents. Veled banim alavotam. 3 messages, he says. First one is Torah. Second one, redemption. Third one, tshuva. These are the 3 last sentences which we read on Shabbos HaGodol before Pesach. Why does he do that? Let's see what the Malbim says. Zichru Torat Moshe. The Malbim was one of the greatest commentaries on Tanakh. He lived in the 1800s. V'asher bidvarav eile chatam hanavi v'aya hanvuah ha'achrona she'acharav, he was the last prophet, she'acharav lo yinabe od navi. No prophet will ever come ad et ketz, until Mashiach. Hodia lehem sheme'ata, from now onwards, lo yikavu od la'asig dvar Hashem binvuah. You won't be able to understand, or HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not reveal to you things in prophecy. Rak yizkaru Torat Moshe la'asot kol akatuv bo, v'hi Toram et asher ta'asu, and he will teach you what to do. So what is the last prophecy? Torah. There will be redemption. There will be tshuva. What do the three prophets tell the Jewish people? Two Rambams, which we're going to learn now. Shlosha Nevi'im alu imahem min hagolah. Three prophets came from Bavel. Echad, one of them, He'id al makom ha-mizbeach, the actual place of the Mizbeach. Echad, the other one, He'id lahem al midotav, the size of it. Ve'echad, He'id lahem she'makrivim al ha-mizbeach kol ha-korbanot, you can offer up the korbanot, avol b'hi she'ein sham bayit, even though there's no Beis HaMikdash properly built yet. The first thing they did was build a Mizbeach, and you can offer it up. What happens? Why? Because Yoshio Melech, says the Rambam, Tziva ugnazo, he hid the Aron Kodesh b'makom shebana Shlomo. The Aron HaKodesh is now hidden under the ground, and with that is three other things: Matei Aaron, Tzinsenet v'Shemen HaMishcha, and no Urim v'Tumim. Now you ask the question, why? Why does this take place? Now, first of all, this transitional period between the Nevuah and Anshe Knesset Gdolah, Ezra Hasofer is aware of. And therefore, what does he do that there shouldn't be a crisis? There shouldn't be chaos. What does he do? He teaches people Torah. Teaching people Torah will avoid a crisis of leadership. The more you know, the more you understand. The more you hear Torah, the more impact it will have on you. This transitional period, Ezra Hasofer manages to deal with. Now, why does this take place? Why does Nevuah stop? And why does learning begin? Okay, now we're going to go into parallels in history for a minute. Parallels in history. We're going to learn in a minute. You're going to learn in a minute Reb Tzodok in a minute. But let's try to analyze what takes place. Now we're going to use certain examples. The first example I'm going to give you is the period of the Renaissance. What takes place in the beginning of the Renaissance? You go out from the Dark Ages into a period of renewal. What takes place? Da Vinci, Galileo, all the great artists, all the great philosophers. There is scientists. Everything changes. But everything. A new world comes in to understand, breaking down the darkness of what takes place before.
Anti-church.
Pardon?
Anti-church.
Anti-church. Exactly. Exactly. Okay? What takes place in the Jewish world? What takes place in the Jewish world is quite amazing. You'd think the golden age of Spain is finished.
No, Poland.
Pardon? Not only Poland. First of all, Shulchan Aruch. Tzfat, a renaissance of the Jewish people. Tzfat becomes the center of the Jewish world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the minute HaKadosh Baruch Hu lets more education coming out from the darkness, he also does the same thing for the Torah. That's what goes on. And you take through history, you'll see parallels throughout history, the same thing. Kabbalah of the Arizal begins to develop. Why? You can't, HaKadosh Baruch Hu cannot give over Chokhmah to the Goyim if you do not have a parallel Chokhmah in the Jewish world. The two go together. What takes place in the non-Jewish world in the period of Ezra? Greek philosophy begins. Aristo, Plato, Socrates, Pythagoras. All these things begin to take place. The pagan world beginning to fall to pieces. The complete pagan world begins to fall to pieces. The Yetzer of pure Avodah Zorah, as we know it, is falling to pieces. What do you need to do the minute the Chokhmah develops amongst the Goyim? You can't rely on prophets. Prophets create enthusiasm. Prophets create impacts. Prophet creates impressions. That's what they do. Okay? But they're not mentors of each one of the people. Ezra, Hasofer, sees this. And therefore there is a need to restart the whole of the Jewish people, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving over also Chokhmah to the Goyim. And if you're going to give Chokhmah to the Goyim, what do you need to give the Jews now? Chokhmah, wisdom. You need to impart in the Jewish people the ability to what? To give a competition, so to speak, to the Jewish world. And that's what he does. That's exactly what takes place in the beginning of Who does Anshe Knesset Shimon HaTzadik meet? Alexander the Great. You are beginning to restart the whole conceptual idea of education and what it means. Now we're going to learn Reb Tzadok. Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin lived between 1850 and 1910. He was a Chassid, guys. He was a Chassid. But he was also a prolific writer. Not only was he a prolific writer, he had this uncanny ability to learn history. There was a famous, anybody who learnt in YU here? Yeah. Who did you know of a guy, Yaakov Elman? Yaakov Elman was a professor of history in YU. Okay, and he wrote, his expertise was Reb Tzadok HaKohen. And he taught history through the eyes of Reb Tzadok HaKohen, Jewish history. You can look it up, you can Google him, you can see, I've read all his articles. Okay, because he had a huge impact on me. And the concept of parallels in history, Reb Tzadok HaKohen speaks about. Now, let's start off Reb Tzadok HaKohen. Reb Tzadok HaKohen says the following. Pardon? Last page. What does Pirkei Avos speak about? Pirkei Avos at the beginning speaks about Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, Shimon HaTzadik. What does Shimon HaTzadik say? What does Antignos Ish Socho say? Okay? Where's Torah Shebichtav? Now we're dealing with Torah Shebal Peh. The development of giving over and explaining the words of Torah orally. Lachen, Hatchalat Torah Shebal Peh Hagluya Lanu. Hu me'anshei Knesset HaGdolah shepasku Nevi'im Achronim. the beginning of the development of Torah Sheba'al Peh takes place exactly when the Nevi'im beginning to pass away. Let's go back, we jumped over a Rambam. Line number 110. וכך נמשך הדבר עד אנשי כנסת הגדולה, והם חגי, זכריה ומלאכי, דניאל וחנניה ומישאל ועזריה, ועזרא הסופר, ונחמיה בן חכליה, ומרדכי, וזרובבל בן שלתיאל. What goes on in Megillat Esther? Is there a prophet there? No prophets. What does Esther come and say now? Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim. They accept upon themselves. And what is this kimu v'kiblu? Also, to sit and learn. That's the kimu v'kiblu. In Anshe Knesset HaGdula, you have this mixture of Nevi'im together with Chachomim. Wise guys, scholars, and prophets. And they sit together. And they work out what's now going to be the future of the Jewish people. So what does Malachi say in his last prophecy? Zichru Torah Moshe Avdi. Remember this Torah. That's what's going to keep the Jewish people. And what's going to keep the Jewish people? The belief in Geula, in redemption. And the belief in Tshuva. That's what takes place. They sit together and they decide what is going to be the future of the Jewish people without a Beis HaMikdash, a proper Beis HaMikdash, where there's no Urim v'Tumim, no prophecy, no Aron HaKodesh. Sha'asagat, says Reb Tzodek HaKohen, Sha'asagat HaNevu'ah hi me'en Torah shebechsav. That's like HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu. Direct contact. Moshe Rabbeinu receives a dictation from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe Rabbeinu writes it down. What do the Nevi'im do? They receive a prophecy, they write it down. Written. Now we've got to begin not only to read, we've got to understand. The period of inverted commas of just reading is ending. You have to understand. And therefore, Me'en Torah shebechtav shura gilui me'Hashem yitbarach ובהגדת כה אמר השם שהם דברים גלויים ואין ספק בהם והם נמשכים הכל מצד עיקר קבלת התורה שהוא תורה מן השמיים. If I want to believe a prophet, I've got to believe in him. I've got no way of testing. A teacher, you can question. You either believe a Novi or you don't believe a Novi. That's what it is. It's belief, to believe or not to believe. Teacher? Don't have to believe any teachers. Okay? Correct. They taught us when we were young you had to believe our teachers. Correct, Paul? Yeah. That's not me. Don't believe anything I say. Check it. Because a teacher is there to make people think. It's not only giving over knowledge. And if you look in the whole of the Gemara, what is the whole of the Gemara if not questioning? Novi, you never question. Torah shebechsav. Torah sheba'al peh, you question. You ask. You break down. Every question is legitimate in the Gemara. Mino ani mili, my timer, teiko, whatever you want to yufta. You name it, guys. Because that's Gemara. Gemara teaches you to question every single thing you learn. And that's what takes place in the time of Anshe Knesset HaGdula. Want to do that. Because the period of believing is ending. Why is the period of believing ending? Because Pythagoras is already, developing Euclidean geometry. And Socrates and Plato and Aristotle are already breaking down all the concepts of theories of creation. So we can't believe everything now. We have to what? Understand. What do you say? Adapt. That's where Ezra becomes the greatest revolutionary. They changed the whole format of thinking because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving this chokhmah to the world. And if he's giving this chokhmah to the world, we have to adapt. And says Reb Tzodek HaKohen, the following. V'chol in line number 135. Line number 134. V'chol nevi'ei hagolah ein safek ledati. They were all born, shenoldu kvar bizman bayit. They were born in the time of the first Beis HaMikdash. וכמפורש בבית שני שהיו שם חגי זכריה ומלאכי שהיו הרבה מהם זוכרים על בית ראשון אבל מזמן חורבן בית ראשון ואילך נסתם כל חזון ולא נולד עוד נביא. No prophet was born. חגי זכריה ומלאכי were the last ones who were born in the time of the first Beis HaMikdash. They were the ones who now transferred their prophecy because we needed to build a new Beis HaMikdash and we needed to know exactly where things was. But that was it. Aval haya hatchalat Torah shebal peh. It says Reb Tzodok in another place. The ikar yesod Torah shebal peh. Hitchil az me'anshei knesset hagdolah. Shehem miyasdei kol gzerot v'takanot chachamim. They begin to enact and create for the Jewish people a whole new format. V'chol hadrashot v'halimudim. של כל שלשלת לימוד תורה שבעל פה הוא מאנשי כנסת הגדולה, etc. etc. That is what Ezra Hasofer does. He recreates a whole new formula of existence. And this formula of existence carries on until this generation. Learning, learning, learning. Don't rely on anybody. Rely on your books, on your sforim. Because that's what Torah is nowadays. The first period of the Jewish people encapsulated a period of absolute belief. And what happens? Yirmiyahu Hanovi tells them there's going to be a destruction. You either believe in him or you don't believe in him. And what happens? There is a destruction. After that, there's no prophecy. There is Anshe Knesset Hagdolah and there's learning Torah. So that is his first revolution. His first revolution is Hamidu Talmidim Harbe. Times are changing, needing to adapt, needing to learn. The next shiur will be on the other things which he did. Hevu metunim badin and asu siyat laTorah.
Is this, that's the Torah and Star where you've got here, right?
Right, questions?
Okay, so getting back to your parallel, so if you look at the period of the Rishonim, you know, obviously there was tremendous scholarship. You're saying that, but it was concentrated only amongst the elite. It was not mass Torah, and the parallel could be that